Yo, really quick before we start the video, I just want to say if you enjoy the content, please consider dropping a like as well as subscribing to the channel. I do put out a lot of educational content like all these guides. However, I do also play the game and I'm pretty good at it. I upload a lot of montages as well as gameplay VODs, and I stream on Twitch. You can see on my channel I have my links to my Twitch, as well as you can follow me on Twitter if you want to see more updates on my plans for content, as well as when I'm going to go stream and all that. Alright, so that's going to be it. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Yo, what's good YouTube? So today I have an update on my stretch res guide. Now this is going to be more of a definitive version, so if you haven't watched the original, that's fine. We're going to basically go over everything you need. If you have already watched it, it's going to be a lot better. This is going to change some things. It's going to be just a much better experience. It's going to have better latency, better visuals, pretty much everything's going to be better about it. But you're not going to have to change like your settings in Apex. So don't worry about that stuff. If you already watched the first guide, you can just, there'll be some timestamps. So once you get to the parts for Apex settings, you can actually skip those if you already have them set up. So getting into it, we're going to go ahead and download custom resolution utility. And the great thing about using this is that we're not going to need Nvidia control panel. So if you are an AMD user, you're going to be able to follow this guide and it's going to work for you, which is awesome. So in the previous guide, we used Nvidia control panel and we used this setting, adjust desktop size and position, and we set it to full screen. And the thing is, even though it says display here, it actually is scaling on the GPU. And because of that, it actually adds like an extra bit of latency. And it also generally produces like a less clear image, unfortunately. So we're gonna go ahead and figure out how to actually make it scale on the display itself. So the actual monitor is gonna do the work for you. And that is going to result in a clear image as well as better latency. So we're going to ignore Nvidia control panel. If you did follow the previous guide, you're going to want to make sure actually that you set and adjust desktop size and position. You're going to want to set this to aspect ratio and perform scaling on display. And you're going to apply. You don't want it on full screen. That's going to make it stretch on the GPU. You don't want that. So just make sure that's all set, and then we won't have to touch Nvidia control panel at all. So again, we're going to go ahead and download CRU, and this is going to be in the description for you. We're going to use this for pretty much everything. So once you have that downloaded, you're going to go ahead and unzip it. And I personally put mine in my program files. For me, that's easier because I tend to use this a decent amount. If you are pretty much only using it once, just put it wherever, but make sure that you can find it. It's not going to be installed. It's not an actual program that you're installing, so it's not going to come up when you search. Like if you type CRU, it's not going to come up with anything. So you want to make sure that you know where to find it. So we're going to run it. It's going to run as administrator. And once you open it, there's going to be several resolutions listed here. So your default's probably going to look something like this. Now this drop-down menu shows you several different monitors. If you only have one monitor, it might not show you as many. I have two monitors. I have one that is just 60 Hertz monitor for, reading chat and all that. If you have multiple monitors, you want to make sure that you select your gaming monitor. For all these steps, it should automatically open up on your main monitor. So whatever your main monitor is, should be all good there. Just open that one up. But just double check that you're actually messing with the one that you want to play the game on. So it's gonna look something like this. You can just do delete all. We don't need any of that. And I'm gonna go back to this one. I'm on. So you want to make sure that you have your native res still, your 1920 by 1080 or whatever your monitor is at. You want to make sure you have your maximum refresh rate. So mine is 240 Hertz. And obviously that's a little bit, more exact than that. So we're gonna make sure that this is, right now, this should be the only resolution in here. We only have 4 slots in here. And then we're gonna go ahead and add whichever one we wanna play the game on. So we're gonna start with 1440 by 1080. And I'm gonna show you guys a lot of different resolutions just to kind of compare, show you how this works. So we're gonna start with 1440 by 1080. Just gonna type that in. And it's gonna autofill all this stuff, and that's gonna be fine most of the time. Like 90% of the time, you're not gonna mess with any of that. And you're gonna wanna make sure that you set your actual maximum refresh rate, but you want it to be ever so slightly different than this one. So you want it to be identifiable. So for instance, the native one right now, it says 7.756 for me. So I'm gonna do 0.761. And it's gonna automatically put it down here. We wanna move it to the top. So whatever is at the top here is going to be what Windows recognizes as your native resolution. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna hit OK. It's gonna automatically close the program. And now we're gonna run reset-all.exe. So I am a dumbass and I forgot that running reset-all.exe crashes the video driver for a second. Well, it restarts it, which actually crashed my recording. Luckily, it did save everything prior, but forgot about that. So it's gonna make your screen go black for a second, and then it's gonna come back. Nothing's gonna change to your resolution just yet, even though you changed what is the native resolution. So again, the one that we put on top is gonna be native now, but it shouldn't change your actual desktop resolution yet. And you're gonna see that this window is gonna pop up. It's gonna give you the option to restart again. Or go into recovery mode. You can close it or you can leave it open if you think you're going to need it again. So our next step is we're going to go to our desktop. We're going to right click and choose display settings. And again, make sure that you have the correct monitor selected for all this. Should be your main display. And you're going to see in display resolution, we're going to go to the one that we just chose, that we just made, 1440 by 1080. So right now, it's going to show whatever your last native resolution is going to say recommended. Basically, so I was just messing around with different resolutions before this. So it shows 1280 by 1024 is my recommended. For you, it's going to show whatever your desktop resolution is, whatever it's currently on. That's going to say recommended right now. We don't want that. We want to change it to whatever the resolution that we chose that we want to play the game in. So 1440 by 1080 for this example. We're going to choose that, and what's going to happen right now is that you're going to have black bars on the side of your screen. So don't worry about that. We are going to stretch it in just a second. So you're going to choose that, and now you see it updates to say recommended. So that means that we did successfully change this to the native res. However, there is one more step to get rid of the black bars. We're going to go down to advanced display settings. Make sure you choose the right display. So you're going to notice here that desktop resolution and active signal resolution do not match. It's showing the old desktop resolution for active signal resolution. So we have to make sure that these match in order for it to actually stretch. Once they match, it'll properly stretch it. So we're gonna take care of that now. And this is why I said to have slightly different refresh rates. So 0.756 is what we were on before. We wanna change to 0.762, the new one that we made. And now we can see that the desktop resolution and active signal resolution do match. And it should now get rid of the black bars. It should be stretched. If it doesn't get rid of the black bars, that means that your monitor is not display scaling it, because we have now done everything correctly. So a couple things to check. Your monitor might have a setting for display settings, for display scaling for aspect ratio. So for me, I go into my on-screen display. I choose input. I choose aspect ratio. And for me, there's full wide, original, and 1:1. And I want to choose full wide on my monitor, and that will automatically scale it to the full display. If your monitor has a setting like that, you want to make sure that you're on whatever stretches it. Try them out. Hopefully it should stretch it. There are some monitors out there that will not display scale, but 99% of them will display scale. We can actually go ahead now and we can change it back to 1920 by 1080. We don't need to stay on this res. Now that we've done these steps, that is all set up. So anytime a program runs in full screen on that resolution, it will automatically fully display scale. So if you just want to play 1440 by 1080 and you've already done the steps in Apex from the previous video, you're all set. Like, you're done. That's it. It should work perfectly. It's going to be a lot clearer than before. Like, the game is going to look much better. It's going to have a little bit better input latency as well. Now, if you have not done those steps, we're going to go ahead and show you how to do that. So we're going to go to our save games location, and I did have this in my description of the previous video, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. Windows key plus R. I'm going to pop up this window. I'm going to go to here. Respawn, Apex, local, video config. Might want to make a copy of it. We're going to go into video config. We're going to first of all right click, hit properties. If you have it read only already, take off the read only, hit apply, open it up. If it doesn't automatically open, make sure you want to like open with Notepad or something like that. It'll probably show up this menu. Choose Notepad from the list. That should be all good. And then we're gonna go ahead and we want to set full screen to 0. And no window border can be 0 as well. It can be 1 or it can be 0, doesn't actually matter. And the one caveat here is if you're using a 16 by 10 resolution, you can actually go ahead and set full screen to 1 and no window border to 0. And you won't have to do the alt enter step when you start your game. And the reason for that is that 16 by 10 is actually natively supported by the game. So you could actually just go into your game and just choose it, but then it wouldn't use force display scaling. Right, so we still have to do the previous steps for 16 by 10, but you don't have to do the workaround with alt enter in windowed mode. You can just have it be locked to full screen from the get-go. And you also will not have the bugged out UI on those resolutions. So 1680 by 1050, 1728 by 1080, any of those 16 by 10 resolutions will be natively supported by the game. So it's a little bit simpler in that way. And then you're going to put in the res that we just chose, 1440 by 1080 in this case, but it can be whatever res that you're going to use. And we're going to talk about some different res. If you want to do different resolutions, we have some other ones we can talk about. And you're going to set that. And obviously, before we do this, you want to make sure that whatever graphics settings you want in Apex are already set. Because obviously it's a pain to change these. Like off the top of my head, I don't really know. But most of these settings, you want to set them to, right? So you want to make sure that you have your settings already set in the game, because it's just easier to use the video menu. And then edit this config. The one thing that I can say, if you want to, while you're editing this, if you want to turn off your shadows in game, setting.csm enabled, set to 0. That's the one thing off the top of my head. If you want to change anything in here before we set this to read only, I like my shadows on, but if you want them off for better performance, you can do that. So again, we have the res set. We have it set to windowed mode, so not full screen. Save that, check the read only, hit apply, and that should be all good there. And then we're going to go into Apex, right click, properties, launch options, and then we're going to copy paste these lines from the description of the previous video. I will put all this in the description for this video as well. I'm just showing where I got it from right now. But yeah, it will be in the description for this video. And you're just going to copy paste it in here. And then we're going to go ahead and launch Apex. And I know in the previous video I did say that you need to be on 1920 by 1080. Or that you need to be on 1440 by 1080. But you don't have to be. You can be on your desktop resolution. That doesn't matter. You don't have to change your resolution at all once you've done the steps for display scaling. And I'm going to change to here. You're going to hit Alt Enter. So this that probably did not show at first because I had to change my OBS to game capture, but it opened up as window and I pressed Alt Enter, and it's gonna change the black bars to the bottom, and that means that it worked basically. And so we've loaded into the game, and you can see the UI is bugged, but we are in fact on the stretch res. I don't believe that display scaling versus GPU scaling will show up at all, you know, on the recording. It's gonna look exactly the same to you guys, but trust me that when you see it in person, switching to display scaling looks so much better. It's just insane how much better it looks. So you can tab out and everything and it works just fine. If you missed the previous video, basically like this fix has been known for a while, but it used to be that tabbing out would actually break it and you get black bars again. And if you change any of your video settings in here, if you change your resolution, you're gonna get black bars. But it's all good. Just don't have to touch any of that and it should be all set. If you decide that you want to go back to native and you want to just get rid of all your CRU settings, you can run reset-all.exe. That's basically just it's gonna put it back to exactly how it was before you even ran the program. So it's gonna reset your native res to 1920 by 1080 or whatever it is for your monitor, and it's gonna get rid of all the custom resolutions that you added. Then you're gonna have to obviously go back into your Apex save files, and you're going to want to make sure that you turn off read only and change it back to whatever res you want. Alright, so now that we've finished setting up force display scaling with 16 by 10 or 4 by 3 or whatever res you want to use, I'm going to go into some custom resolutions, but first I want to talk about FOV. So in Source Engine, it keeps the vertical FOV intact when you change aspect ratio, but it does decrease the horizontal FOV. So if you are playing on a stretch res, you are going to have lower FOV. So my recommendation is to use autoexec to have a higher FOV. And if you haven't watched my 120 FOV guide, I will have that linked if you need more information, but we're going to go through it kind of quickly. If there's anything that doesn't make sense, you can just refer to the full guide. So basically in this game, the maximum FOV that you can actually get through the slider is CL FOV scale of 1.55, which is equal to 108.5 FOV. But the maximum that you can actually get in the game, period, is CL FOV scale of 1.7, which is 119, so basically 120. So my recommendation is to counter the fact that lowering your aspect ratio reduces your FOV. I recommend that you use the config to get to a higher FOV. So just to compare that, so if we put in the 108.5, that's through the in-game slider, and we do 4 by 3, so it's actual FOV of 108.5. We copy the actual FOV to desired FOV, and we compare that to native. See, that's only 92 FOV, so that's pretty low. Now, if you use the 119 value, you can see it gets to 104, so that's a lot better. And if we compare this on 16 by 10, we can see that 108.5, so through the in-game slider, that's only 103 on 16 by 9. So it's still going to be lower FOV, but you can go all the way up to equivalent to 114 FOV on native. So that is going to be kind of helpful to counteract the lowered FOV from your aspect ratio. So the way we're going to do this is you're going to go into Steam, and we're going to open up properties. We're going to go to local files, browse, and we go to CFG, and I have an autoexec. You want to make sure that you have in your view tab file name extensions have to be on for this. And you do make, right click and do new text document. You name that autoexec.cfg. I'm gonna call it autoexec2. You open that with Notepad. It should automatically open up with Notepad. If it doesn't, just choose Notepad from the list. And then you put CL FOV scale 1.7. Save that. And you go back to your properties, general, plus exec, autoexec. I called it autoexec2. You would just do autoexec1. And again, if any of this was too quick for you, if it didn't make sense, go ahead and refer to my 120 FOV guide that is linked in the description, and that will help you out. Now I want to talk about some non-standard resolutions. So we talked about 4x3, so 1440 by 1080 is the most common one. And we talked about 16 by 10. Most people are running 1680 by 1050 or 1728 by 1080. I want to talk about some other resolutions because it turns out that with this whole fix, this whole process, you can do basically any resolution that you want with CRU. And you can also do it with NVIDIA control panel, but again, CRU is going to be better. So my recommendation, first of all, when you're making a new custom res, you want to keep it at 1080. That's what looks the best. Well, 1080 or whatever the height of your monitor is. My recommendation is that you leave it at that, and then you find a horizontal pixel count that works for you. Now, I decided I've been playing on 16 by 10 for a long time now, but I wanted a bit more stretch than that, but I don't want to play on 4x3. So I want to find something in between. So a lot of people have been using 3x2 resolutions. So that would be 1600 by 1080. So I decided to look for something around there. Now we're going to do a little bit of math here. Not that hard, not that scary. But basically, your aspect ratio, right, it's a fraction. So 16 by 9 native res is 1.77 repeating. 16 by 10 is 1.6. 4 by 3 is 1.3 repeating. So you can see like there's some pretty simple math here. So if you want to find something in between there, you can pretty much just like go off of the numbers. So if you want to find the exact midpoint between 16 by 10 and 4 by 3, you would do 1.6 plus 1.33. Divide that by 2. Pretty simple math, right? I assume you're following me here. And that'd be 1.46. So you see that 3 by 2, which would be obviously 1.5, is right around there. It's pretty much the midpoint. So if you want something a bit more stretched than 16 by 10, but you don't want to go all the way to 4 by 3, my recommendation would be finding somewhere around there, around like 1.5, 1.45, somewhere in there. So I messed with a few different resolutions. So one that I tried out, 1568 by 1080. So this one is going to be that is a 1.45 ratio. And one way that you can find out like what resolution you want to use, so like I said, you want to keep your vertical height. So say you figure out the ratio you want to use. Say you want to use like a 1.54 ratio. You just multiply that by 1080, and then you would plug in that for your horizontal pixels. Now the one thing is that in CRU, at least with my monitor, some resolutions don't properly work. For me, I found that with some resolutions, like 1728 by 1080, it's a really common 16 by 10 resolution. Half of my screen is black. I think that's a problem more with my monitor. For some people, it might work perfectly, but for me, certain resolutions do not work. So that's the reason why I have like these very specific seeming resolutions. Just like I had to mess around and do trial and error until I found one that actually worked and didn't have black lines. Sometimes you get black lines. And if you do get black lines like that, all you have to do is just, keep your horizontal or keep your vertical pixel count and just kind of add or subtract pixels until it works. And you're going to have to go through the same exact process that I showed you at the beginning. So I think this is the resolution that I am going to stay on for the time being. So this is 1632 over 1080, 1.51. So it's just over a 3x2 res, pretty much exactly 3x2 res. And for me, this looks really good in game. It's very crisp. It's not nearly as stretched as 4x3, but it's a little bit more stretched than 16x10. It does bug out the UI a little bit, but it's not too bad. Yeah, this is what I really like. So I'd recommend trying out somewhere in that range. If you can do 1600 by 1080, I think that that's a really good midpoint to try out. For me, it didn't work. This one I also tried out 1568 by 1080, and that one is a little bit more stretched. That one looked really nice as well, but I think I'm gonna go with this one instead. So yeah, again, so just to show the process, if you wanted to make a new res, like say you want to do 1600 by 1080, you literally just put it in there. You put in your refresh rate and make it just a little bit distinct. So that's 0.764. So yeah, 0.761. That's good. Move that to the top. We hit OK. And then we have to hit restart. Once it's restarted, you go to display settings, change it to the new res. It would show up in here. Advanced display settings, go to there, and then there would be a new refresh rate. Right, so same steps that we already showed at the start. And then you would do the same thing. You would go into your video config, you would turn off read only, then you would put in the new res that you want, turn back on, save it, and then turn back on read only. And then you start the game, you press Alt Enter, and that's it. Same exact steps, but you can do this with pretty much any res. Now, one thing that might be helpful is to go back and use that FOV calculator again. So it's in the description. So if we want to use this with the custom res, all you would have to do is you put in you can just put in the full resolution. You don't have to calculate the aspect ratio. So say like 1600 by 1080. You can just put that in, and then you copy this, put that in here, and you see it's equivalent to 109.5. So the resolution that I am going to be playing on for the foreseeable future is 1632 by 1080. So I can find out that, so I'm basically playing on equivalent to 111 on native res. So this isn't, obviously the most important thing, but it's helpful to know. So if you want to shoot for a certain FOV, you can kind of figure that out. If you want to play on like a bit of a lower res, so I figured out with a 1.45 to 1 aspect ratio. So I was doing 1568 by 1080, figured out that is basically exactly equivalent to the maximum FOV that you can get on native res using the in-game slider, right? The 108.5. So that's just kind of a cool thing. I don't think it's like that important, but that's just kind of a cool thing that you can do. So that's pretty much going to be it. I think I've pretty much talked about all of the stuff I wanted to talk about with the custom res. If you have any questions, you can ask them. I don't know how helpful I will be able to be. I think I've pretty much explained everything I know about this process. So I am going to go ahead and put in some footage comparing different custom resolutions just very quickly. And then that's going to be it for the video. If you're not really interested in that, then that's the end. Thank you for watching. If you want to see how some different resolutions compare, how the different stretch looks, then you can just enjoy that really quick, and then that's going to be it.